All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously shadowy stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Because today we're exploring
Let's go.
the CIA's infamous mind control projects, MKUltra and Artichoke.
I love it.
Um, and we've got declassified documents and
Yes.
expert analysis to unpack. So
Yes.
let's
Yeah.
let's figure out what really went down with these
I think it's so interesting how
controversial programs.
these programs really mirror the anxiety of the Cold War.
Yeah.
It was like this race for control that extended beyond
Bit unnerving,
physical
to
weapons
say the least.
and delved into the...
Our deep dive starts with Morse Allen,
Yeah.
the CIA's first behavioral research czar.
Realm of the human mind.
This guy was absolutely fixated on the potential of hypnosis.
Right. And I think it's so interesting.
Yeah.
His early training raises some eyebrows.
Yeah.
He learned from a stage hypnotist who actually boasted about using hypnosis
Yeah.
for,
Well, let's just say less than ethical purposes.
like, getting people to do things they shouldn't do.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that begs the question, like, what about
Yeah.
this type of hypnosis really resonated with Allen?
Yeah.
And how did it influence his approach to the CIA's research?
Well, and his experiments went
None.
beyond simple suggestion. We're talking about Allen convincing secretaries
Oh, yeah.
to steal classified documents,
Yeah.
start fires, even simulate assassinations,
Yeah.
all under hypnosis.
It's scary.
It's unsettling to think that this was
I know, a real Manchurian Candidate.
happening right under the nose of the American public.
A programmed assassin operating without conscious awareness.
Wow.
There was even a plan to hypnotize a double agent,
Really?
program him to attempt an assassination, and then have him eliminated.
Oh, my goodness. Thankfully, that
Yeah,
operation never
yeah.
came to fruition.
It's crazy to think about.
Right.
But his ambitions didn't stop there.
Yeah.
He actually proposed terminal experiments. What?
Testing hypnosis on agents under extreme duress.
Oh, gosh.
One scenario even involved a staged arrest and potential torture
Wow.
by a foreign police force.
That's intense.
That's to wonder how far they were willing to go.
I know. It makes you wonder how far they were willing to go in the name of national security.
In the name of national security.
Right. And this raises questions about
Right.
the ethical boundaries of scientific exploration,
Yeah.
especially when human subjects are involved.
Yeah, for sure.
While Allen eventually lost control of the program,
Right.
his obsession with the Manchurian Candidate
Right.
didn't disappear. It actually evolved
Yeah.
under Sid Gottlieb and the notorious MKUltra project.
And that's where the story takes a really dark turn.
Is where the story takes a darker turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gottlieb shifted focus from overt hypnosis
He shifted focus from overt hypnosis to chemicals.
to chemical,
Biological agents, and then sort of these
biological agents,
subtler forms of...
and subtler
ethical manipulation.
forms of psychological manipulation.
Right.
MKUltra is infamous for the CIA's experimentation with LSD
Yeah. And often
and other.
drugs, often on unsuspecting individuals.
These experiments were conducted
Right? These experiments conducted
in secret safe houses.
secret safe houses.
It raises serious ethical concerns about informed consent
Right.
and the potential for long-term harm.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that these activities were taking place
Yeah.
with little to no oversight.
I know.
This wasn't just about controlling minds anymore. It was about
It wasn't about just controlling minds anymore. It was about
techniques to
developing techniques
discredit, injure,
to disorient, discredit,
or even eliminate targets.
injure, or even eliminate targets.
MKUltra's scope expanded far beyond mind control.
Yeah, it really did.
It encompassed sabotage techniques,
Right.
stress-inducing chemicals.
It encompassed sabotage techniques, stress-inducing chemicals, and even biological weapons.
And even biological weapons, for instance. Dr. Edward Bennett,
Dr. Edward Bennett,
working under MKUltra,
working under MKUltra,
developed bacteria specifically designed
specifically
to sabotage petroleum products.
designed to sabotage petroleum products.
And this technology was even used in a successful operation
Wow.
targeting Cuban oil shipments.
This operation,
Yeah,
while seemingly ripped from fiction,
it's just wild.
demonstrates the tangible impact of these programs.
Yeah,
It's a stark reminder that these actions had real-world consequences,
yeah,
even impacting the lives of ordinary citizens.
real-world consequences.
The CIA was actively attempting to cripple the Cuban economy, ultimately causing hardship for the Cuban people.
They were actively attempting to cripple the Cuban economy.
MKUltra also involved testing behavioral control materials on prison inmates.
Yeah, and culture also involved testing behavioral control materials on prison inmates, often without their informed consent.
Without their informed consent.
Dr. James Hamilton, a psychiatrist at a California prison,
Right, Dr. James Hamilton.
was a key figure in this research.
Yeah.
Um,
And then there's Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, another
Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, another
cultural researcher
cultural researcher,
who provided the CIA with extensive data
who provided the CIA with extensive data
on the preparation, use, and effects of various drugs.
on the preparation, use, and effects of various drugs. Disturbingly, he also served
on FDA committee.
an FDA committee overseeing LSD research.
Overseeing LSD research. This conflict of interest raises serious questions about the objectivity and
That's
ethics
a huge conflict of interest.
of his involvement in both roles.
Yeah.
And
one incident
that really brought the ethical implications
that really brought the ethical implications
to light.
of these experiments to light.
Was the infamous elephant experiment.
With the infamous elephant experiment,
Dr. Louis Jolyon West,
Dr. Louis Jolyon West,
another M-culture researcher,
injected an elephant
with an enormous dose of LSD, ultimately resulting in the animal's death. The public outcry following that incident is understandable.
Yeah.
This event highlighted the potential for abuse when scientific research is conducted behind closed doors without proper ethical guidelines and oversight. While M-culture was officially terminated in 1972,
Right.
the CIA's interest in
But behavior modification
behavior modification
didn't simply vanish. It evolved, adopting new forms and utilizing increasingly sophisticated technology.
Adopting new forms.
So this is where utilizing increasingly sophisticated technology.
Office of Research and Development, or ORD, comes into play.
This is where the Office of Research and Development,
So even though one chapter closed,
or ORD, comes into play.
a story wasn't over.
So even though one chapter closed, the story wasn't over.
The desire for control persisted,
Right.
leading to new avenues of exploration within the CIA.
The desire for control
This raises the question,
persisted, leading to new avenues of exploration within the CIA.
what exactly did the ORD focus on?
Right.
And how did they push the boundaries even further?
This raises the question, what exactly did the ORD focus on?
Yeah.
And how do they push the boundaries even further?
The ORD's research delved into some pretty unsettling areas.
Yeah.
They were particularly fascinated by brain stimulation research,
Right.
using electrodes to control animal behavior.
Yeah.
This raises some serious ethical concerns.
For sure.
What were they hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
And were there implications for potential human application?
Their goal was to really understand how electrical stimulation of specific brain regions could influence actions and responses.
Right.
And while initially focused on animals,
Yeah.
the potential for controlling human behavior through similar techniques was a chilling possibility
Yeah.
they were exploring. Yeah.
They were also deeply invested in amnesia research,
Oh, yeah.
investigating ways to erase or manipulate memories through brain surgery and drugs.
Yeah.
Imagine the power of being able to selectively alter someone's past or implant false memories.
Right.
It's the stuff of dystopian novels.
It does seem ripped from science fiction.
Yeah.
But this research was very real.
Right.
The implications of such control over memory are immense,
Yeah.
raising profound ethical questions
Totally.
about personal identity, autonomy, and the very nature of truth.
And remember the Scientific Engineering Institute we mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
This CIA front continued to push the boundaries of scientific exploration, conducting research on gene manipulation, parasitology, and other fields that could potentially be used for nefarious purposes.
Right.
What exactly is gene manipulation?
So gene manipulation involves altering the genetic makeup of an organism.
Okay.
And while it has potential for medical breakthroughs, it also raises the specter of creating biological weapons or designer humans.
Yeah.
The ethical implications are staggering.
It's mind-boggling to think about the potential for both good and evil
Right.
that this kind of research holds.
Absolutely.
The dual nature of scientific progress is both fascinating and terrifying.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is what makes this topic so compelling.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths
Right.
about the nature of power, the limits of science, and the fragility of the human mind.
So how did this all eventually come to light? Did the public ever find out about these ORD programs?
The truth, as it often does, emerged through a confluence of events. The Watergate scandal and subsequent investigations into CIA abuses forced the agency to come clean about some of its darker activities, and this climate of distrust and demand for transparency ultimately led to the exposure of these clandestine programs.
This instinct for secrecy makes it incredibly difficult to understand the full scope of their actions. How would the CIA respond to this pressure?
Well, it wasn't exactly a full confession. Remember how Sid Gottlieb and Richard Helms destroyed MKUltra records to protect the agency and its researchers? Well, that wasn't an isolated incident.
Oh, wow.
When cornered, the CIA's default was to cover its tracks, making it challenging to uncover the full truth.
This revelation added fuel to the fire, demonstrating that the CIA's overreach wasn't limited to MKUltra. What were the consequences of these revelations?
Well, New York Times reporter Seymour Hersh published this explosive article revealing the CIA's illegal spying on domestic dissidents during the Johnson and Nixon administrations.
So the CIA was not only engaged in mind control experiments, but also illegally spying on American citizens. This was a major betrayal of public trust and a violation of the agency's mandate.
Huge.
Did the Rockefeller Commission
and trail of public trust
uncover the truth about MKUltra and the ROD's activities?
And so this revelation, combined with the Watergate fallout, led to the formation of the Rockefeller Commission, which was tasked with investigating past CIA abuses. So the Rockefeller Commission's report focused primarily on the drug experimentation aspect of MKUltra. The broader implications of the CIA's behavior modification research, including the ORG programs, were largely glossed over.
Oh, wow.
However, their findings sparked the interest of John Marks. A former State Department official turned investigative journalist.
John Marks, as in the author of the very book we're discussing right now?
The very same.
Wow.
He filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the CIA, demanding access to all documents related to the agency's behavior modification research.
So this was the beginning of a long and arduous battle to uncover the truth about MKUltra, Artichoke, and the ORD programs.
This was the beginning of a long and arduous battle to uncover the truth about MKUltra, Artichoke, and the ORD programs.
It's fascinating how one person's pursuit of the truth could force such a powerful agency to reveal its secrets. His work was instrumental in bringing these programs to light.
And Marks didn't stop there. He held press conferences, published articles, and testified before Congress. All in an effort to expose the CIA's clandestine activities. His efforts, along with those of other journalists and investigators, helped to bring the extent of the CIA's overreach into public consciousness.
It's important to acknowledge the ethical implications of these experiments.
Absolutely.
We're talking about potential violations of human rights, the misuse of science, and the erosion of public trust in government institutions.
The potential long-term consequences for the unwitting subjects of these experiments are deeply troubling.
These weren't just abstract experiments. They involved real people whose lives were irrevocably altered by the CIA's actions.
They involved real people whose lives were irrevocably altered by the CIA's actions.
How do we even begin to measure the damage done?
That's one of the most challenging aspects of this topic. The CIA's culture of secrecy makes it incredibly difficult to piece together a complete and accurate account of what happened. We rely on declassified documents, often heavily redacted, and the accounts of individuals who were involved, many of whom were hesitant to speak out, whether out of fear or because they've been sworn to secrecy.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly.
The lack of transparency makes it incredibly challenging.
It does.
To understand the full extent of the impact these programs had on individuals and our society as a whole.
We have to approach this topic with a critical eye. Questioning assumptions and considering multiple perspectives. We can't simply rely on the CIA's official narrative. We need to dig deeper, examine the available evidence, and draw our own conclusions.
So how do we go about uncovering the full truth when faced with so many obstacles? What are the main challenges researchers and investigators face?
One major hurdle is the destruction of documents. When Gottlieb and Helms decided to purge MKulture records, they created this gaping hole in the historical record.
Right, and even when documents survive, they're often heavily redacted.
They're often heavily redacted.
With key names, dates, and details blacked out.
With key names, dates, and details blacked out.
So it's like reading a censored novel.
Exactly.
You get the general idea, but crucial information is missing.
Right. And then there's the issue of reluctant witnesses.
Yeah.
Many individuals who are involved in these programs are hesitant to speak out.
Right.
And additionally, we have to consider the inherent secrecy surrounding intelligence operations.
Yeah.
The CIA, by its nature, is a clandestine organization.
Right.
Its methods and motives often hidden from public view.
This raises the question of how we balance the need for national security with the right to know.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance.
It is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
However, transparency and accountability are essential in a democratic society.
Right.
We can't allow government agencies to operate with unchecked power hidden from public scrutiny.
We, the people, have a right to know what our government is doing.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to sensitive areas like mind control and human experimentation.
It is our responsibility to continue asking tough questions, demanding answers, and holding those in power accountable for their actions.
Yeah, it's unsettling to think about those programs operating in secrecy.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, did these kinds of activities surely end, or are they still going on today just under different names and with different levels of oversight?
Question worth considering.
Right.
The techniques and knowledge gained haven't vanished.
Right.
And technology has advanced significantly since the days of MKulture.
Oh, yeah.
So while there have been reforms in research practices, the potential for abuse remains, particularly as fields like neuroscience and artificial intelligence continue to advance.
The potential for misuse is certainly concerning.
It is.
We're in a whole new world of possibilities, both good and bad. The same science that leads to medical breakthroughs could also be used for nefarious purposes.
Precisely. Imagine the implications of manipulating human behavior on a larger scale through sophisticated algorithms, neurotechnology.
That's scary.
It's crucial to be aware of these advancements and their potential for misuse.
So what steps can we take as informed citizens to safeguard against such risks? Knowledge is power, but how do we translate that into action?
First and foremost, I think we need to educate ourselves about the latest developments in neuroscience, AI, and related fields.
Right.
The more we understand these technologies, the better equipped we are to recognize and challenge their potential misuse.
Yeah.
We can't afford to be passive observers.
We need to be active.
We need to be active,
It's also crucial to advocate for increased transparency
Absolutely.
and accountability in government research.
Yeah.
We need clear guidelines, ethical review boards, and independent oversight to ensure that these powerful tools are used responsibly.
We need to be vigilant and ask tough questions.
Yeah.
Holding those in power accountable is essential.
Right.
The stakes are high.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very essence of what it means to be human. Our thoughts, our emotions, our freedom of choice.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least.
It has been.
What are some key takeaways we can glean
from
this exploration of the CIA's mind control programs?
Well, I think, firstly, it's a stark reminder of how the pursuit of power, even with the justification of national security, can lead to the erosion of ethical boundaries and human rights.
Yeah.
We've seen how the CIA's actions had these devastating consequences for individuals and sowed distrust in government institutions.
It's also a cautionary tale about the dual nature of scientific progress. Advancements in any field can be used for good or ill, and the potential for misuse must always be considered.
Always.
We need to be aware of the potential risks associated with powerful technologies and advocate for responsible innovation.
Advocate for responsible innovation, absolutely.
Another key takeaway is the importance of transparency and accountability.
Yes.
Demanding open discourse about scientific research, especially when it involves sensitive areas like mind control and human augmentation, is critical.
It's critical.
We cannot allow such research to be conducted in secrecy, hidden from public scrutiny.
We cannot.
This has been a sobering look into a dark chapter in history.
It has.
What final thought would you leave our listeners with as they contemplate the complexities of mind control and the future of these technologies?
Well, I think the quest to understand and control the human mind is a story that's still being written.
Yeah.
While the specific programs we discussed may be in the past, the underlying issues remain relevant.
They do.
It's up to all of us to stay informed, engage in critical thinking, and participate in the ongoing conversation about the ethical implications of these powerful technologies. The future of our minds, and indeed our society may depend on it.
That's it for today's deep dive into the world of CIA mind control.
Wow.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
It doesn't.
We encourage you to explore the source material further. Do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And draw your own conclusions. Stay curious. Stay informed.
Stay curious.
And remember, the power to shape the future lies in our collective awareness and action.